Hello everyone and welcome back, Dace here, and today I'm going to be sharing my review for Cave Story Plus on the Nintendo Switch. So let's get right into things. I'm not going to be comparing differences between Cave Story, the original, and Cave Story Plus. I'm just going to get into like the basics that, we're going to get at. So anyway, what is Cave Story Plus? It's an action-adventure platformer, Metroidvania style game created by Daisuke Amaya originally in 2004 over a 5-year span, more or less just in his free time. He did this as like a personal project. And anyway, we'll just get into the story. You play as a robotic soldier by the name of Quote, who seems to have no recollection of who he is, where he came from, all that kind of jazz. You start off in this little cave and you just begin exploring your way downwards. Quote makes his way into the depths and eventually comes to this village inhabited by a race called the Mimiga. Now, they look like rabbits to me, but anyway, you soon learn that there's this evil doctor who's abducting the Mimiga and forcing them to consume this type of red flower that is really dangerous. It more or less turns them into like savage, like really aggressive versions of themselves, and so he's like wanting to exploit them and just all that kind of craziness. So anyway, you're setting out on this quest and blah blah blah, and you meet Curly Brace. She's this female robot, and you guys like just get it on nonstop. And so you guys team up after the shenanigans, and you just more or less are going through these challenges and facing bosses and stuff to make your way to the doctor and thwart his evil plans. But will they succeed? That's the question. Now, in this game, there are alternate endings. I have not done all of them myself, personally. I've done 1 or 2, and I'll get into more of that in a minute. So anyway, that's more or less the story chunk of things. As for the gameplay and controls, the gameplay is great. Like, everything is really smooth. The bosses are a lot of fun. Like, it's a really cool platformer. One major highlight about the gameplay is the weapon level up system. So you collect these Doritos, I call them Doritos anyway, and it fills up this bar, and you have like a total of 3 levels per weapon, and the weapons just get stronger as you level up, of course. But if you take damage, you start losing that. So it's it can be tricky because like you want to keep everything topped up so you're as powerful as can be. But if you're taking damage, you're going to be getting weaker, or your weapons are going to be getting weaker rather. So I really thought that was cool. I've never seen that in a game before, and I think it's just really, really neat toying around with that. Also, the machine gun, when it's at level 3, you can actually use it to propel yourself upwards. So I thought that was really, really awesome as well. As far as exploring the game, it's a lot of fun, though it's definitely not super extensive like modern games tend to be, like Axiom Verge, for instance, like just loaded with stuff. It's definitely not anywhere near that kind of in depth, but it's still fun just like checking out every nook and cranny that is available. So lots of fun there. There could definitely have been, I'm kind of just like getting into more of the gameplay stuff. In terms of these save points, I feel like there definitely could have been more spread out here and there, because like sometimes you would save and then you would go through this long stretch and then you would encounter a boss and then you would get a save point. But it's like if you died on the way, or you died attempting the boss for the first few attempts or whatever, you're just replaying what you've already gone through, what you've already conquered. Whereas like a save point right before the boss would just make so much more sense. So in some ways it was definitely tedious and repetitive and just felt like unnecessary in those kinds of situations. So that was like one thing that I really noticed in both my playthroughs, because I've played the game twice now. Anyway, the controls are super smooth. But one thing I noticed is that it's easy to overshoot your jumps when you're jumping or jetpacking your way up and you want to land on like a single block. it's very easy to just miss the mark. And I think like it's not really the fault of the controls. Like I think it's designed to be just like, whoa, here we go. But at the same time, it's just something that does crop up from time to time. So it's worth mentioning anyway. As for the music is fantastic in Cave Story Plus. It really holds that old school feel, or at least in my opinion it does. It just sounds, yeah, like retro and just old school. It's so good. The Graveyard Song, in my opinion, is one of my favorites in the entire game. There's just something about it. And there are other songs, of course, too, that just really, really hit home. So I think it's just awesome. As for the sound effects, again, just very fitting given the nature of the game and when it came out, and just creating that sense of nostalgia for older games within me. So yeah, I really appreciate that. Everything just sounds and works really nicely. So a solid choice for the sounds, in my opinion. Anyway, overall thoughts. The game is super short. I think my first playthrough was about 5 hours, and that was with certain bosses taking multiple attempts, and just certain sections also just taking their toll until I finally made it through them. My second playthrough was definitely much shorter. So yeah, it's a very short game. In some ways, I felt, in my first playthrough specifically, I felt that the game was very underwhelming compared to all the hype that this game receives. Like I've heard stuff like people saying, oh, it's like the best game ever. And I think that is just a lot of hype talking personally. Like I get that this is one of the first indies ever, or is the first indie. I'm not sure which, but I know it was like a very old school indie, and I get that it has had an impact, and like I can appreciate it in that sense, but that doesn't mean it's gonna wow me today. Like that being said, my second playthrough, I really enjoyed it way more than I did the first time. And one thing I noticed with like going after the second, or like one of the other endings in my second playthrough, there was just that much more drive to explore more and uncover more, and I noticed myself wanting to play a third time, which I will, but probably not right away, because I do want to do that third ending for like the complete whatever. So yeah, in that sense, there's definitely replay value. It's just kind of like I want to space it out, because it's not a game that I'm super crazy about, but it's one that I can enjoy, and yeah, there's definitely an intrigue to see what else can happen in there. So anyway, that's more or less gonna wrap things up. Like I don't really have too much else to say. Like I bought the physical of it. If you are not a diehard physical kind of person, then I would probably wait for a sale, to be honest. Like this is definitely not a must buy for me anyway. Like because there's a physical and it is what it is, I was totally stoked to check it out, but yeah, it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, that's for sure. But still a really cool game. Like I'm not saying that to bash it, it's just like it's just going to rub certain people certain ways, and if I had, let's say, played it when it first came out and it had more of a place in my heart from way back, then yeah, sure, I'd probably have so much more of a drive for the game now, but that's not the case. Like I just got it a handful of months ago, so I'm very new to the game, and of course there are a lot of other awesome games out there, so yeah, that's just what it is. But anyway, all in all, a really neat little adventure. Definitely check it out if it sounds interesting, and if it doesn't, then yeah, that's cool too. Anyway, be sure to like and subscribe, everyone. That's going to wrap things up for today. Yeah, share your comments below. I would love to hear some feedback. Yeah, whatever you want to share about this, if you've played it, if you haven't, things that you're maybe intrigued by, or maybe just, yeah, you have no interest whatsoever after seeing this. Just, yeah, share all that stuff. I would love to hear it. Anyway, you guys have an awesome day, and I will see you next time.